Hello, fellow flamenco enthusiasts, and welcome to Everything Flamenco. I'm your host, La Jugo, and this is episode 33, where we're going to talk about Villancicos or Spanish Christmas carols. So, since it is December and actually almost Christmas, I know I'm a bit late with this episode. Let's talk about Christmas carols that are sung in many Spanish speaking countries that are better known as villancicos. The origin of the word villancico is actually not really clear. Some sources say that it's called villancicos because the songs were originally sung by villains, although not villains as in evil people, but people who live in rural areas. So others actually gives it Latin roots, as it is coming from the Latin word villanus. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which means peasant or man of the field. And others link it to the name villa and the people who live there. So either way, the origins all have a similar theme, which links it to more of the countryside and not to towns or cities. So that is where it originally came from. And the same goes for the time period that the Villancicos emerged. So, gosh, you guys, it is really difficult to research things that have such a rich history because, as with flamenco, a lot of these things may not have been recorded before, so there's differences in timelines and things. But what I seem to find mostly was that villancicos emerged in the 13th century, but maybe even as early as the 11th century, where it displayed similarities to Moorish hymns or chants. And it then spread throughout Spain during the 15th and the 16th centuries during the Renaissance. And the first expressions were about daily life in the villages and in the countryside and what they were up to. And some were frequently devotional or even love poems. But during the Renaissance, it seems to have become a way of collecting the main events of a region. So, as an oral tradition, it was sung by its inhabitants and then, also based on love and court themes. And they were performed for nobility all over, set to music by renowned authors. I will give you the time period now, but later it became religious or it had a religious connotation that followed one another from the day of the Immaculate Conception to the day of the Epiphany, culminating in Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. But the problem was that the court origin of villancicos was full of theatrical excess. It took its toll and it was then banned from temples. Although, as I will tell you at a later stage, it later returned to the temples. The reason is that the Christian churches considered these songs to be pagan because many of them were sung to celebrate the winter solstice and they were also believed to be a bit profane. So, something interesting about the profanity connection was that apparently in the past, villancicos were also sung in groups known as rondas de Nochebuena or rounds at Christmas Eve, in which single men sang on the one side and married men on the other. And the first group, single men, would include in their repertoire ballads and songs that they used to flirt with local beauties. And obviously, as you know, in that time, they can get a bit crude. So I can just imagine what the wording was like. While I'm talking here now, you're probably wondering now, what on earth does this have to do with flamenco? But just be patient, we will get there. I first just need to give you a little bit of background. So, the Villancicos began to have some religious overtones around the 17th century. So at that time, the Catholic Church wanted to attract believers. So they added religious lyrics to the carol's rhythm that related to Christmas and the birth of Jesus. And then in the 17th and 18th centuries, they reached great sophistication. Obviously, now also with the Renaissance period happening before and all that. So it was, they added choirs and soloists and stage performances, and it became really lavish. And at the end of the 18th century, they were merged with other genres. And then later in the 19th century, it became really established as a Christmas genre that was then allowed to be sung in churches. I think that was around the same time also that many other Christmas traditions we know today were also allowed into the church. So I don't know if you all are familiar with all the Christmas traditions, but some of them actually have pagan origins, like wreaths and gift giving, which were then also eventually accepted and adopted by the church. Today, Villancicos are traditional poetic compositions that allude directly to Christmas, and most of them are religious and will mention the birth of Jesus or refer to Belén. In Spanish, in English, it's Bethlehem, but some of them do it indirectly. So my favorite one, I really love this song, and I'm interested to see or hear more other Villancicos, flamencos as well. But my favorite one so far is La Virgen Gitana, or The Virgin is a Gypsy. So it's a typical flamenco-fied villancico. So here is the flamenco connection, which we will discuss. So here's your flamenco link. Okay, just bear with me. The chorus, for example, sings about Mary, so the Virgin, La Virgen Gitana, being a gypsy, and she wins over the gypsies. But Joseph isn't a gypsy, he's a payo, and he rebels. And some of the verses are also about the baby that should be kept away from the berries that he's eating, as it makes him tipsy. So I will play this song for you now. It's taken from a recording of this year at the Zambomba in Jerez. We will talk about Zambombas next year, December, I promise. I was planning on doing it this month, but it just didn't happen. And Christmas is around the corner, so there won't be time to do it. I promise you we will do an episode on Zambombas next year. But let's listen to my favorite, Villancicos.
Y el niño de Dios, ay, curri, 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 agua le traía, agua le traía, agua le traía. Marroños al niño no le demos más, que con los marroños se van borrachas. Que sí, que no, María se llama la madre de
I hope that you enjoyed that as much as I did. I find that song really fun and joyful and happy and really something that you want to dance to. I don't know if you noticed, but the melody and the words, obviously, if you can understand them, and obviously also listening about my comments before the song played, are very different to the English Christmas carols we are familiar with. So if you look up different villancicos, you'll also note that many of them are sung by children in the recorded versions, which is also very different to our English traditions. You know, we have Michael Bublé, for example, that comes out of his cave every year for Christmas. So around the 1500s, villancicos were also sometimes accompanied by a vihuela. I think it's a vihuela, Vihuela, which is a guitar-shaped lute, and songs were sung in Spanish as well as Portuguese. Today, villancicos are popular custom and one of the identifying features of Christmas in Spain and also in other Spanish-speaking countries, but we are now specifically talking about Spain. And it's especially something that children really enjoy. I think that's maybe also why with the recordings you oftentimes find that children sing the songs. So not so long ago, we could see children carrying different instruments like the zambomba, which sounds like this. I will still explain about the zambomba instrument as well, but the zambomba sounds like that. And they also use tambourines, the caraca, the bell, or even a bottle of aniseed liquor, which is all being played as a musical instrument. And children would go around to relatives and neighbors in search of the much appreciated aguinaldo or Christmas bonus, or at least a polvoron, which is a shortbread type cookie with ground almonds in them. Instead of now just teasing you a little bit about the flamenco connection with La Virgen Gitana, I can finally get to the flamenco connection, which is your typical, I'm going to call it villancicos flamencos or villancicos gitanos to differentiate from the other villancicos or more traditional Christmas carols that are sung in Spanish. Different sources call it different things. Some just call it villancicos, but I don't want to get confused. So I'm going to call it either villancicos flamencos or villancicos gitanos. These villancicos are distinguished from others because the compás allows you to dance flamenco to it. What I mean is that different flamenco palos or song patterns, such as bulerías and tangos, are sung and applied to villancicos. So these kinds of songs have become emblematic of the Andalusian popular culture, and La Virgen Gitana, for example, is a villancico flamenco, and it is in a 4 count. So you can dance either a tangos or a rumba to it. Villancicos flamencos, as we understand it today, obviously developed in Andalusia, where flamenco also developed, of course, by the gitanos, who assimilated the villancicos that were made in Spain at their own pace to also make it danceable. Zambombas is what is danced, and villancicos are the songs. And then the one instrument that you play is also a zambomba. It's a bit confusing, and I really want to get into it a bit more. But unfortunately, you will have to wait until next year. Otherwise, this is going to become too long of an episode. And what am I going to talk about Christmas next year? So maybe something to look forward to. But anyway, these traditions are still celebrated today, especially in Jerez, where you can possibly catch videos of every year's celebrations on your streaming platforms. That's also where I got the live singing of La Virgen Gitana from, is from one of those videos. In the flamenco-fied villancico songs, the lyrics all stem from the Andalusian Christmas repertoire. So they mixed irony with pain from the knowledge of young Jesus' destiny. There's almost always mention of the Virgin, and then can also mention trees, food, many everyday scenes, but above all, there's joy at the arrival of the child, who is referred to in classic Villancicos as El Niño de Dios, the child of God. And in these songs also the Virgin bathes, brushes her hair, cradles the baby, the child smiles, it's a night of peace, and the angels make music. And curiously, the Virgin is always a gypsy, while Joseph is oftentimes a payo, the Spanish for non-gypsy. So again, referred to my favorite Villancico, La Virgen Gitana, where she's also doing everyday things like washing clothes in the river, just emanating everyday life. I'm going to end off this episode just by talking a bit about the first recordings of Villancicos with the flamenco connection. So it is possible that the first recording of this was not made by someone from Jerez or Triana, your typical Gitano regions, but someone from Malaga, Antonio Grau, or El Rojo El Alpargatero Jr. was born in 1884. And his nickname comes from him apparently being an espadrille maker. I don't know how true that is, but he was apparently a very interesting person who had a long life full of professional adventures which go beyond the flamenco villancicos. He was apparently also a singer, a composer, a drag queen, a postal worker, an entertainment entrepreneur, a French teacher, and a school director. And he died in 1968. So how this recording happened was early in the 1900s. Antonio recorded a disc in Paris. So it wasn't even in Spain, it was in Paris, together with Enrique El Negrete. So Dictera, whose first two lyrics are a villancico, which is then perhaps the first flamenco villancico in history. So it was sung to the rhythm of chuflas, which are apparently the president of the pulerias, that La Niña de los Peines. We also did a flamenco bit on in episode 9. It was flamenco bits number 5, created in 1909. So chufla is like a more humorous bulería with funnier lyrics and more relaxed. And the flamenco villancico reached its greatest success with Rafael Ramos Antuñez. Popularly, this native of Jerez, he was known as El Niño de Gloria, which is interesting because Gloria is a woman's name. He's been considered the first to sing traditional carols to the rhythm of bulerías. So bulerías, as we know today, not chuflas, bulerías. And his stage name is directly related to this, Gloria, because he recorded the villancico Los Caminos se Hicionista in 1929. And it was obviously heard a lot at the popular festivals where he was singing, and he attended since he was a child. And in the chorus, apparently, they say Gloria a lot. So because the song became so popular, and it was him that sang it, his stage name became Gloria, or El Niño de Gloria, just because of the lyrics of the carol, which is very interesting. And that is all I'm going to say about Villancicos today. I can just go on and on about this topic. I think this is such an amazing cultural part of Spain, and I think I only scratched the surface of everything that is Villancicos, and especially Villancicos with the flamenco connection. I'm going to call it that just to be on the safe side. But yeah, maybe something for you guys to explore as well. Maybe we can do another episode sometime and explore it a little bit more. Let's see where this goes. But I hope you have enjoyed this episode. May you have a beautiful Christmas. Feliz Navidad. And I will chat to you again in the next episode, which is going to be a very special one. So look out for it. Until we talk again. Ole!